Howdy, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Rebuilding Real Life. My name is Mike, and today I want to ask a question that I think comes after we start learning how to stop escaping our lives. And that question is, what am I actually trying to build? Last week, I talked about how the substance changed, but what I was trying to escape from kind of stayed the same. I talked about learning how to sit with anxiety, fear, anger, and all those other feelings without immediately reaching for something to change how I felt. But I think if recovery is only about what I'm trying not to do, then my whole life can still be organized around that old version of me. I can spend every day thinking, don't use, don't isolate, don't blow up, don't lie, don't repeat the past. Those are important guardrails, and I still need them, but guardrails aren't really the place that I'm trying to go. And at some point, I had to ask a different question. Now that I'm not spending so much of my life trying to escape it, what do I actually want to be present for? What kind of husband, dad, friend, and person do I want to be? What do I want an ordinary day in my life to look like? So this isn't an episode about finding one giant purpose or coming up with a perfect 5-year plan. I'm not trying to become Captain Productivity and fill every hour with something impressive. I'm just talking about building a life that feels honest to who I am, what I value, and what I believe God is calling me toward. And when I picture that kind of life, the picture in my head is actually pretty ordinary. The life I'm trying to build is not very flashy. It looks a lot like being a normal, useful part of my family. I picture helping my youngest kid get ready for school, taking another one of my kids to school, and then coming home to work on the podcast or another project or just take care of some things around the house. I picture picking my kids up, spending the afternoon with them, making dinner, and sitting down to eat together. Then maybe I leave for a meeting or for work, and then I come home, talk with my wife or watch a show together, and go to bed. That's it. That's the big dream. And right now, my wife and I are still working on our marriage, so I don't live that whole day, but I do get pieces of it. And those pieces matter to me because they show me what I'm trying to move toward. I want to be present, dependable, useful, and part of the normal rhythm of my family. I do want to be productive and useful because for a long time, I really wasn't. But productivity isn't really what I'm talking about when I say I want my actions to line up with my values. I can get a lot done and still behave in ways that don't reflect the person that I want to be. The better word for what I'm talking about, I think, is integrity. I want my actions to line up more closely with what I say matters to me. I value my faith, my family, honesty, responsibility, service, growth, and steadiness. When I live farther away from those things, I don't feel like myself. But when I do live closer to those things, I feel more whole. That doesn't mean I always feel happy or that I handle every day perfectly, because I don't. It just means there's less distance between what I believe and how I actually live. During active addiction, that distance created a lot of shame. I knew what mattered to me, but I really wasn't living like it mattered. Recovery is helping me slowly close that gap. The life I'm building is not really about becoming somebody new. And I think in a lot of ways, it's just about finally living more honestly as myself. One of the first times that I could actually feel that life coming back to me happened only a few weeks after I left treatment at one of my oldest kids' band concerts. I don't remember being nervous before the concert, and I wasn't really worried about cravings, and I wasn't sitting there wondering whether I would make it through, but the realization hit me unexpectedly while I was watching all of the kids during their warm-up. I remember sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, I get to do this sober. I'm not high, and I don't even have a desire to be high. And if I'm being honest, it almost made me cry. Because only a few months earlier, I didn't really believe that was possible. Something like a school concert would have been a situation I thought I had to get high for. There's people around, there's noise, waiting, and all the normal anxiety that can come with being in a crowded room. And I had gotten so used to believing that I needed something to make those situations more manageable. But that night, I wasn't fighting my way through the concert. I was just there watching my kid. I wasn't thinking, oh, I have to be here. I was thinking, I get to be here. That difference was huge for me. Recovery wasn't only asking me to give something up, it was giving me the chance to experience my own life again. I was there because I wanted to be there, and I was able to feel proud, grateful, and present without needing to change the moment first. I think early recovery gave me a lot of moments like that because everything still felt so new. I noticed the absence of getting high because for years, getting high was just part of how I prepared myself to do almost anything that made me anxious. That concert was the first time I remember realizing that sobriety was not only removing something from my day, it was allowing me to return to something. And as more of those moments happened, I started to see that addiction had been taking more from me than I understood while I was in it. Because while I was using, I thought getting high was helping me keep things together. But I can see now that my life was slowly getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I never really asked myself whether getting high was helping me participate more fully in life. And I think if I had honestly asked myself that question, I probably would have gotten help a lot sooner. Because from the time I started using THC in 2022 until I tried to stop in 2024, I mostly believed it was keeping me from spiraling or becoming worse. Even when I knew something was off, I could still tell myself that I was holding things together. But once I tried to stop, and I realized I couldn't, I started seeing that it was doing a lot more harm than good. And the harm wasn't only what happened when I was high. Sometimes it was the things I never offered to do because I knew they would make me anxious. I could avoid the experience completely and just tell myself I didn't want to go. I was too anxious or somebody else could handle it. The simple point is that my life was getting smaller even while I believed I was holding it together. One of the moments when I felt most proud of my recovery was a family trip to the Mall of America. We had several kids with us, went on rides, walked through Sea Life Aquarium, and there were people everywhere, right? And I had to keep track of everyone. And in the past, a setting like that would have sent my anxiety through the roof. And then once I became overwhelmed, I could get discontent or irritable and just stop enjoying what was right in front of me. But this time, my anxiety didn't take over. I stayed present and patient, and I actually enjoyed the day because it didn't feel like too much. So I didn't become discontent or irritable. I was really proud of how I handled it. At the band concert, I think the feeling was gratitude. And then at the Mall of America, it was confidence. I was starting to trust that I could participate in a bigger life without needing to escape every uncomfortable feeling or perceived uncomfortable feeling. Then I got to chaperone my daughter's field trip to the Children's Museum. And I remember thinking, I actually get to do this now because I don't need to get high. That one landed differently because I realized I probably would have not even volunteered for the field trip while I was actively using. I would have talked myself out of it before it ever happened. That's one of the ways I think addiction steals from us that can be hard to recognize while it's happening. It can take the opportunity before it ever becomes a memory. I don't only lose the event, my child would have also lost the version of me who could have shown up for it. Now, on most days, at this stage of my recovery, those thoughts don't happen as much. But recently, I went to a movie with my wife and one of my kids, and I didn't sit there thinking about how I would have needed to get high last year. I just thought, this is really nice. I get to have a normal moment with my wife and my kid. And I don't think that means I appreciate recovery any less now. I think sobriety is slowly becoming normal enough that I don't have to think about it all the time. At first, I was amazed that I could be present. Then I became proud that I could handle more. And then I saw what addiction had been stealing. And now sometimes I simply get to just live in the moment. Once I could see that recovery was giving me room to live, I needed a way to decide what I wanted to build inside of my life. One exercise that I did in treatment gave me actual words for the kind of life that I wanted to build. It was a value worksheet. There was a long list of values, and I started by marking all the ones that felt important to me. Then I grouped similar values together and chose one umbrella word for each group. I rewrote the groups in my notebook so I could see not only the main word, but what that word meant to me. And I ended up with 5 groups. They were integrity, mastery, service, balance, and curiosity. Integrity included things like honesty, accountability, responsibility, trustworthiness, reliability, humility, and self-respect. Mastery was about growth, personal development, focus, determination, preparation, and achievement. And then service included family, close relationships, community, empathy, generosity, helping others, and meaningful work. Balance included serenity, health, stability, simplicity, and inner harmony. And then curiosity included freedom, creativity, exploration, openness, originality, and expression. And I don't walk around reciting those lists every morning, but putting them on paper gave me something tangible to grab onto. Instead of vaguely asking what kind of person I wanted to be, I had actual language that I could compare my choices against. And that was the real value of the worksheet. It turned a vague idea about living better into something I could actually use. My understanding of those values has grown since treatment. For example, faith was one of the words I marked on the original worksheet, but it wasn't one of my 5 umbrella words. But today, faithfulness feels like it sits over everything else. It shapes what integrity, service, growth, family, and steadiness all mean to me. I believe those values are part of how God made me. And I feel most like myself when I'm living in a way that honors those values. That is why the answer cannot simply be that everybody should build the kind of life that I'm building. Someone else's life may be centered on creativity, community, learning, family, faith, meaningful work, or something I would never think to name. The point is not to borrow my list. The point is to get honest about what matters to you. Then I can ask a more useful question. Does the way I'm living today agree with what I say I value? Not perfectly, and not in every single area all at once. But is there one choice I can make today that moves those two things a little closer together? For me, some of those values are helping me repair parts of my old life, and some are really helping me build things that did not exist before recovery. The genuinely new parts of my life are not only projects, they are new ways of getting through life when life gets hard. My faith is deeper than it used to be. I have a sponsor, I have friendships in recovery, meetings where I feel connected, and service commitments that give me reasons to be accountable and dependable. I have the podcast, which gives me a way to take things that I've lived through and hopefully make them useful to somebody else. None of those things guarantee that I will never struggle. They give me somewhere honest to take the struggle. They help me stay connected instead of immediately isolating, lashing out, or trying to make the feeling disappear. There are also a lot of difficult moments that do not feel like emergencies anymore. I can get frustrated, take 10 minutes, settle myself, and keep going. But if something is bigger than what I can work through on my own, I know how to reach out. That feels like another part of the life I am building. I'm learning when I can handle something and learning when I need support and not treating either one as a failure. Service is part of that too. For me, the instinct when I'm hurting is often, a lot of times, to isolate. Sometimes doing something useful for another person, helping at a meeting, or keeping a commitment helps me act according to my values even while the feeling is still there. I think the important question is whether I'm doing it freely or creating a silent contract where somebody owes me praise, trust, or the outcome I want. The life I'm building is not a busier life that keeps me from feeling. It's a life with enough faith, connection, purpose, and honesty that I can have a difficult feeling without disappearing from everything that matters to me. And I think that distinction matters because the life I want cannot depend entirely on getting the ending I hope for. The clearest picture I have of the life I want includes my marriage and my family together. But I also have to be honest that I can't guarantee that outcome. I hope that my wife and I rebuild our marriage. We are working on that, and it matters deeply to me. Being a husband and a family man is like a core part of how I understand myself. But if my entire recovery only counts when I get that outcome, then I'm still trying to control something that doesn't entirely belong to me. If my marriage ended, I would be devastated. I would have grief to work through, and I would not pretend that faith or recovery will make that loss easy. But my meetings, work with my sponsor, therapy, prayer, service, the podcast, and growth would still matter. I would still be a father. I would still want to be healthy, functional, and stable for my kids and be the best co-parent I could be. I would have to let myself feel the sadness, but do it without letting it determine my recovery. I would still be responsible for what I had done, but I would not help myself or anybody else by turning the rest of my life into a case against myself or against my wife. And I honestly hope I never have to live that version of the story. But it helps me understand something important. Even if my marriage were ultimately beyond repair, I would not be beyond repair. Yes, life would look different, but my values would still tell me how I wanted to live inside it. That is where faithfulness matters to me. Faith, I don't think, is a promise that God will give me the exact family outcome, career, relationship, or future I want. Faith is trusting that He can still show me how to live faithfully with what is in front of me. Instead of only praying, God, keep me from going backwards, I can ask, hey God, what do you want me to do with this life, time, attention, and opportunities I have today? Amen. I can participate faithfully and still leave the final outcome with Him. That means the life I am building is guided by my values, not guaranteed by a certain ending. The outcome may change the shape of my life, of course, but it doesn't have to change the values that I choose to live by. And that makes the first step smaller and more possible than figuring out the rest of my life today. So if you know what you're trying to stop, but you maybe don't know what you want to build instead, I want you to start with one value. Choose one thing that honestly matters to you. It could be faith, family, honesty, dependability, creativity, health, community, service, learning, or maybe something completely different. Don't choose the word that sounds the best to you. Choose the one you actually want your life to reflect. Then I want you to ask yourself, what is one ordinary action that would agree with that value this week? For example, if the value is connection, maybe the action is just calling one safe person instead of isolating. If the value is dependability, maybe you just keep one commitment that you already made. If the value is family, maybe you put your phone down and be present for one ordinary hour. If the value is faith, maybe it's praying honestly and then doing the next thing that you believe God is asking of you. And you don't need to build your whole life this week. You just choose one value and one action, and then let that one action become a small piece of evidence that your life can move towards something, not only away from something. When I think back to that band concert, what stays with me is how simple the moment was. I was sitting in a school auditorium, watching kids warm up, and I realized I got to be there and be sober. Since then, there have been crowded family outings, field trips, festivals, movies, late night conversations, and a lot of normal moments that I once believed I needed to get high for. Those moments are not a reward, that I earned for becoming perfect. They are pieces of the life I'm learning to participate in. Recovery gave me the chance to stop escaping my life. Rebuilding, to me, means using that chance to live closer to what I believe and what I value. So this week, choose one value and take one small action that agrees with it. You don't have to know the whole plan. Just build one small piece of the life you want to be present for. And that's part of rebuilding real life. Remember, recovery is not only about what we are leaving behind. It's also about the life that we finally get to be here for. Thank you so much, guys. That's all I got for today. Thanks for listening to Rebuilding Real Life. Remember, we're not perfect, just willing. Have a good one, y'all, and I'll see you next week.